What defines Yugi Moto, who for the majority of his time in Duel Monsters remains the shadow to his millennium-old alter ego, to the point where Kaiba didn't acknowledge Yugi as a great duelist, but rather the pharaoh. But today, we're going to be focusing on how Yugi Moto surpassed Atem. I think Yugi and Atem are equally as important to each other in terms of their own character development. Yugi brings out a softer side to the pharaoh, as opposed to his instinctually ruthless self. And the most obvious instance of this is Yugi vs Kaiba in Duelist Kingdom. The pharaoh is fully ready to send Kaiba flying off the edge of the castle. However, in this instance, Yugi is the voice of reason, and convinces Atem not to kill a man over a card game. Atem also seems to observe the value of friendship and how much it means to Yugi, and he discovers there are things more important than winning. And the following conversation between Taya and Kaiba reveals a lot about Yugi's character. Kaiba simply states that Yugi lost the game, and Taya tells Kaiba that he only won because Yugi has a heart and showed him compassion. She continues by saying Yugi has friends who are with him until the end. And what do you have, Seto Kaiba? Tell me. And although Kaiba seems visibly frustrated by this, he continues to say, I have all that I need, which in this instance he is referencing that he will be able to duel Pegasus since he beat Yugi. This actually shows a huge similarity between Seto Kaiba and the pharaoh at this point, as they both seem to share the mentality of winning by any means necessary. And this moment against Kaiba is extremely impactful for the pharaoh, and it hugely affected his relationship with Yugi, because Yugi loses a lot of the trust that he had in the pharaoh, and is anxious about giving him control, and from this point forward they seem to work a lot more as a partnership. And this gives the pharaoh a greater perspective on Yugi as a person, and Yugi is an important influence on the pharaoh for the rest of the series, making sure he doesn't get carried away in the pursuit of victory. And when Yugi isn't around to do this, we can see the results of it and how the pharaoh does get carried away. After Yugi sacrifices himself to the seal of Orichalcos, we see immense guilt from the pharaoh, and without the positive influence of Yugi, the pharaoh reaches a breaking point when he faces Weevil, who torments him, pretending to rip the card that had sealed Yugi away. And I think we all know what happens next. The duel is over, the pharaoh has won, but it's not enough. This scene is brilliant for several reasons. First of all, the voice acting and soundtrack are incredible, but thematically it's a brilliant callback to Duelist Kingdom, and it really displays that the pharaoh does need Yugi around. Without Yugi to stop him like he did in Duelist Kingdom, the only other person around is Taya, which was also a great choice because she intervenes in Duelist Kingdom as well, the only difference being this time it's too late. But I enjoy the parallels in the writing. It's sometimes easy to forget that this was a filler arc, because the writing fits so seamlessly into the story. At least that's how I feel. I think what Atem learns from Yugi is on a more emotional and mental level. On the other hand, I feel that Yugi learns a lot more literal things from Atem, and one of the most obvious ones is advancing his dueling skills, and I believe that it's made clear the pharaoh is a better duelist than Yugi at the start of the series, and from a narrative point of view, this works really well. It gives both characters a good chance to learn from each other and inherit their positive traits, until eventually, Yugi will be put to the test. Once the Millennium items are assembled, Yugi has to show that he's become a good enough duelist to beat the pharaoh, and the pharaoh has to show humility in defeat and accept that winning isn't everything. Although, just to be clear, the pharaoh is not holding back. In fact, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he has the best deck in the series at this point. He's in possession of all 3 Egyptian god cards. At the peak of his powers, Atem, the king of games, faces someone who seeks to take his throne. Both of them promise to give it their all, embracing a portion of Atem's earlier mindset, and going all out to ensure that the best duelist wins. Something I find interesting is that you can view this showdown as a student versus master dynamic, but the best part of viewing it this way is that it's not linear. You can view it from the perspective of either person being the student or the master, as they've both learnt a lot from each other. They've improved different aspects of themselves by learning from each other's actions and the experiences that they shared, and it's clear that they have a lot of respect for each other. I think it's clever the way they handled the ending. For all the things that Atem and Yugi have learnt from each other, they reversed the roles at the end. And what I mean by this is I previously mentioned Yugi taught the pharaoh how to handle his emotions, and the pharaoh taught Yugi how to be a better duelist. On the cusp of his victory, Yugi breaks down and is unable to accept that the pharaoh will be gone, and it's none other than the pharaoh Atem himself that tells Yugi it's going to be okay, using what he has learnt from Yugi to console him in this moment. And just before this, Yugi uses what he's learnt from Atem to beat him. On Atem's last turn, he attempts to use Monster Reborn to revive Slifer the Sky Dragon, and in his head he starts thinking how this isn't the right time for him and Yugi to separate. And at this point it's a great choice to have us listen in to their internal dialogue, as although they're now separated, they had become so similar in their time together. And the beauty of this is it's exactly what allows Yugi to win. He predicted from the start that the pharaoh would use this strategy, and locked away Monster Reborn in his gold sarcophagus. Yugi used what he had learnt to beat Atem, and Atem took what he had learned from Yugi to gracefully move on, and to comfort a friend in need, just like Yugi would. And in this moment, both characters perfectly mirror one another, and it's the perfect conclusion to the journey they've been on, demonstrating the qualities they've gained from each other along the way. There's so many moments from this final episode that I love. In the English dub, after Yugi wins the duel, Atem walks over to him and says, "A champion doesn't belong on his knees." With the excellent delivery of this line from Dan Green, along with the writers who had the idea for it in the first place, this line encapsulates Atem's character really well, and there's almost an inexplicable quality to it. I find it makes him sound like a leader and a mentor, which is quite fitting given that he's a pharaoh from thousands of years ago. He shows Yugi encouragement and assures him that this was the right thing to do, and that in their time together, they served their purpose. They protected mankind from the return of the Shadow Games, and because of each other, they've both grown tremendously, and this final battle is a passing of the torch from Atem to Yugi. And with his victory, Yugi is now the one and only King of Games. Now I've covered why this is a significant moment for both characters, but it's also an excellent ending to the series as a whole. Yugi and Atem get the conclusion that they both deserve, in a way that makes perfect sense to the story. I've seen it time and time again in other series, where the ending doesn't quite feel right, where it feels like there's something missing or too much unexplained. But honestly, this is one of the best endings I've ever seen. There's criticism that Atem duels in Yugi's place too much throughout the series, but this isn't always the case. They performed a very impressive soul-swapping strategy against Pegasus, and it's through each other that they are able to grow, displaying how they both evolve over the course of 224 episodes, concluding in a final moment where Yugi is able to outsmart the pharaoh, thanks to all the time they had spent together, leading to an excellent prediction from Yugi, which is how Yugi Moto surpassed Atem. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I've been enjoying making these character analysis style videos, and you guys seem to like my last one on Joey Wheeler, so thank you guys for all the support. And let me know which character you want to see next in the comments.